3 minutes after 8 o'clock here at WCDT is Thursday. It's got local with Lauren. Cody Bucher's in here with us. And, this is going to be a fun show. I'm excited. Huh? Yeah, we're live.
Well, welcome to, what was our show called?
What?
Liberty is Treason.
Liberty is Treason.
I was having a flashback.
Yeah.
How long ago was this?
2 years.
We did it for about a year.
Yeah, it was over a year and a half.
Is it like a podcast?
No, we did right here.
Really?
Yeah, we did. Actually, on this day, Thursday, 8 o'clock.
Yep.
It was.
Well, welcome back.
Yep. We talked about all kinds of fun political stuff.
I was thinking about something this morning in regards to that. I got in a discussion with a guy the other day, and he said he was a contractor working at my house, and I asked him, why I didn't have any help, but he said, because I can't find any. And I gave him some names, and some of the names are Spanish names, and he said, well, I don't hire illegals. I said, well, how is a human illegal? And he said, well, there's a border and there's a law. I said, so you believe in all the laws? And he said, no. I said, you're a big fan of government and politicians? He said, no. I said, well, who draw that line? That one that goes between Mexico and the United States. He said, politicians. I said, you're a fan or you're not? It's funny because people are hypocritical about a lot of things about government. They want, on one hand, one thing, but then they don't want the same thing on the other hand. It's just hypocrisy. And that's one of the things I was going to talk about today. We'll get into business a second ago, but this is a Christian nation. Everybody says it is, and we're based in Christianity. But we often forget the most important thing that Christ said. And I'm not even a Christian, I'm a humanist. But Christ was the Prince of Peace because he did say something very important. And he said the way that we should pray is, forgive us, Father, as we forgive those who trespass against us. But nobody seems to forget. We go back to Hammurabi's code. Everybody gets mad, they scream and they yell when the Ten Commandments isn't on the courthouse or whatever, but the Ten Commandments is Hammurabi's code. That's out for now. That's what Jesus came to replace with love and forgiveness. Nobody forgets. Why?
Told you, Lauren, it's going to be a fun show.
Well, I just want to back up to this hypocrisy part. Because I feel like, yes, it is hypocrisy. It is what it is. But I also think that most people, by you pointing that out to that man, he was not putting in place the man-made boundary, so therefore he didn't realize that he was being hypocritical. But you opened his eyes. I hope that he was open enough to receive that and to understand that, that boundary that was being made was a man-made boundary, and then maybe he could open his mind to accept somebody beyond their race or location.
That's funny. Y'all went that. The first thing I went to when you said it was just because the last name's Hispanic. What makes you?
I think he was illegal. I addressed that too. Yeah. It's a longer conversation.
Yeah, that was what went to my head first. Was like, I know a lot of Hispanics around here that, perfectly legal, been here for years.
Not that I'm great at it, but what he did there was an assumption, and that's really where the core of all human suffering comes from. It comes from assumptions, because when you make an assumption, it's inherently wrong because nobody can see the future. And from that assumption, you draw an expectation, and when that expectation isn't met, you're upset and you're sad. But if you never made the assumption to begin with, and you just address what was in front of you right now, then you've never been sad.
Hey, I've not had enough of your products today to be able to have this deep conversation.
I haven't either. I actually avoided my products this morning. I should have partaken. Actually, I'd be in a much better state.
So let's talk about your business. What do you do?
I'm a gardener.
That is, yes.
Love it.
That is the
Simple.
truth.
Okay, so as far as my business goes, I'm Rock Creek
Here
Cannabis.
comes the depth. Just like what you were saying a minute ago. Here we go, a gardener, and let's just dig into these weeds here.
Okay, so as far as my business goes, and I'm not saying this to be proud or not proud, I'm really indifferent about it, but I grew marijuana for a long time. And secretly, of course, because it was illegal. I no longer grow marijuana, but I had that skill. And I'd quit for probably 10 or 15 years because I just quit smoking, really, because I had a job that I couldn't smoke. So when the hemp bill passed, when Trump signed the hemp bill in 2018, I was very curious. But I waited a few months to see what products would start hitting the shelves because I was curious. I mean, because it does have THC in it, and I know how to extract it and things like that. So I was curious. And I started getting the products off the shelves, and I bought a few of them from a few different stores, and they were gross. They were like yard grown, farm grown. Some of it had bugs in it. It was brown. It wasn't cured right. And I realized, you know what? It's a new industry in Tennessee. And these guys don't really know what they're doing yet, but I do. So you remember when I set up the garden in my back room, growing hemp, and I did real well with it. In the first grow, I grew hydroponically, organic. Everything was, I grew in the same method and style that you would have put the money and energy into marijuana. And sure enough, it was beautiful. It had really high CBD. It had a great effect. I started, just handing it out to friends and things like that were cannabis users, and they really enjoyed it. So I said, well, heck, I'm going to make a business out of this. So I got a business license in 2018, and I started Rock Creek Cannabis.
I'm gonna sit there and be honest. Cody's one of the things that helped me with my back, because I have a back surgery. I refuse to take pain medications. I'm not that guy. I don't like them. I'm so terrified of being addicted to them that I wasn't gonna put myself in that position, because I've seen all the horror stories. Heard them, seen the pictures, seen what it does to people, know people who it's affected. So I was like, I'm just not gonna put myself in that position. So when he was able to make the first CBD gummies, and he's like, here, try these. And at that point, you can tell. I was even.
Yeah, we were new to it. Then they were kind of gross at that
Yeah,
time.
I was like, I'm not sure about this. So he goes, no. He goes, it'll help. And so the first few they were not very good flavored at all. They were rough.
We've progressed quite a bit.
But they,
Evolution.
but they did the job, and they helped with my pain. They helped me, sleep at night. And so I've been taking them for 5 years, almost 4 or 5 years.
Yeah.
I've been taking these things. I swear, they are amazing. And they've gotten a lot better flavor-wise. They don't taste horrid. I actually like them now.
What's your favorite flavor?
The cherry. Cherry is by far my favorite.
Cherry is definitely the best seller. Blue Raz is probably the next best seller. We got 2 more varieties coming out. We got watermelon and orange. And my wife is the mastermind behind the flavors.
The flavors.
Because she uses like real juices and things like that, and like real fruits. We don't use any preservatives because we just don't really believe in putting junk in there that doesn't need to be in there. So ours have to be refrigerated.
Okay.
But we don't use any of the waxes or oils. It's literally just fruit, water, coconut oil, and the plant matter extract. And our plants are all grown hydroponically for the most part. And the flavors really pop differently than like soil. It just really brings everything out, so it tastes good, it smells good, it has a great effect. We've gotten all the dosages dialed in. That's taken a while.
What products do you make those in?
We only make gummies as far as that goes right now, and we do pre-rolls for another company that I can't mention on the internet. But so we also supply. So what we grow, we sell to other people who processes most of it, and then we process a little bit of our own for our gummy sales. Which honestly, our gummy sales aren't really that high. I'm not really focused on that right now. I'm focused on more the flower side of it.
Okay, so break that down. What's that mean?
Well, flower is what people call buds.
Okay.
We call it flower. We don't call it, marijuana or weed or anything like that. It's cannabis because that's the scientific name for it. So cannabis flower is what we call it. That's what people call your buds or your nugs, things like that. But it's CBD, so we really hate that terminology because it kind of casts a bad light on a beautiful plant in a beautiful market that has a lot of stigma behind it due to actually privateering billionaires and government payouts. That's how it all became illegal back in the 30s. The first person actually arrested for marijuana was a farmer growing hemp. After 20 years of the government telling everybody to grow hemp for war, and they made money out of it, they made uniforms out of it. And then what really happened was that DuPont, who had just created nylon.
That was a real funny trivia question this morning. Was what was Betsy Ross's family claims that she made the first American flag out of?
Hemp.
Hemp.
My papa's World War II uniform was hemp.
Yep.
And the beautiful thing about hemp is, and here's why it was made illegal. It was made illegal in the 30s by William Randolph Hearst, who was the largest newspaper magnate in the world. And he owned all the major newspapers also. We also owned all the timber industry. Well, 1 acre of hemp can produce more paper than 10 acres of trees, and it's annual. You can do that every year. So he felt threatened by the hemp industry because they just really figured out how to make paper out of it. And then DuPont had just invented nylon. Well, all the rope at that time was made out of hemp. Well, those were billionaires who got a hold of a senator, I think his name was Aldrich, and they created this whole campaign through William Randolph Hearst's newspaper organization called Reefer Madness, where they were saying that people were axe murdering their families that were on marijuana, and they actually changed the spelling of marijuana to add an H. They called it marijuana, so that the farmers wouldn't know they were talking about hemp, because the farmers would have raised heck, because you had a whole industry in the United States of farmers all across the country growing hemp. They're making good money, making rope, making all sorts of products. Now mine doesn't get made out of rope, but I am looking into those things. But I am because the only thing you can do that is the fiber stems. But we're working with an organization right now who's about to start taking our fiber stems. But we recycle everything else. There's no other part of the plant matter that leaves our building. We recycle all of our water, even our dehumidifiers go back into a system and get used again through a reverse osmosis filter.
All of this in Rock Creek? Estill Springs?
No, we moved. We changed
Okay.
locations. Now we're in Winchester in a large warehouse.
Okay. Now, do you press the flower to get the oils for?
Well, there's different methods of
Okay.
extraction. We don't do any extraction up there. We ship it to places that do that for us.
Okay.
But the way they generally do it, here's where we're going to get sciencey for a minute.
You're very sciencey anyway, so jump in because my brain is
Well,
over
there's a-
here.
Welcome to my weekends.
There's,
Like, what
there's
am
a
I
fancy
listening to?
science word called decarboxylation. And decarboxylation is just literally a chemical way of saying that you're going to convert one chemical to another through an exothermic reaction through heat. So basically, if I light something, it's going to have an exothermic reaction. But if the molecule changes and doesn't, if the molecule changes in molecular structure but doesn't change in states, meaning it doesn't go from a solid to a gas, or then it's called decarboxylation because it just added something. For instance, if you take THC, the normal delta 9 that people get highs and get kites on, if you heat it up, it converts to CBN, which is not legal. Well, not illegal.
Mm-hmm.
It's the same thing with your CBDs and stuff like that. There's a lot of confusion in the market right now as far as the science goes. But the fact that, and here's what messed up our legislatures. Right now, Tennessee law is messed up with cannabis. It contradicts itself left and right. And it's only because I don't think they were educated well enough on the realities of how the chemistry works.
Mm-hmm.
And to be honest with you, I really think that probably when they legalized it, they made Tennessee pass it, the guys that were promulgating the hemp law were actually looking forward to marijuana and not. They were just trying to get the doors open.
Mm-hmm.
So they said what they needed to say, and they probably left the legislators a little bit ignorant.
Mm-hmm.
Because the fact is I can take the beginning cannabinoid, which is the first cannabinoid produced is usually THCA, and it's an acid. Well, THCA, when it decarboxylates, turns into delta 9 when you heat it. Well, I can actually convert anything from CBD to CBN to THC, or vice versa. I can take THC back to CBN. I can take it back to CBD just through chemical processes.
Okay.
So, and there's a lot of chemical processes. So, for instance, you ask how I take it out, how they would take it out of the plant. Like for our gummies, for instance, we just use a little machine, and it basically heats it up. And we use lipid fat. You have to use an oil, butter, any lipid, any fat, because it won't move to water without a crazy chemical process. So we just basically, the old method was you throw a little weed in the crock pot, you throw some butter in there, you let it sit for 8 hours, and then you strain it all out, and your butter's loaded. And essentially, that's all it is. We just do a much more scientific process where we make sure that the THC isn't too high, because it can only be 3% THC, but when you start accumulating it into one batch, you can run over the limit if you're not careful.
Okay.
But Tennessee laws allow us to do that and allow us to hold a little bit of that. And they won't throw us in jail for being over the 0.3. They gave us 1.0. So basically 10%. Anything less than 10% THC in Tennessee won't get you thrown in jail if you're a grower like me.
Mm-hmm.
But they'll make you go through a process of destruction and destroy it. We have to have it tested. Every harvest we have to have it tested by the state. They come in our building. They have TBI guys come in and actually do the testing, but it's Department of Ag that does the inspections.
Now,
All right. Oh,
sorry. Go for it.
now, what is the difference? Because I don't have a clue. What is the difference between Delta 8, 9, 10, CBD?
Yes.
Trickery. So when the hemp law first passed, Tennessee loves to tell the federal government to go to heck, which I kind of love. That's how 10th Amendment of the Constitution says that all states have sovereign right over the federal government unless the federal government directly addresses it. Well, when Obama said that the federal government wasn't going to address cannabis anymore, that throws them out the window. Then it's all up to the states, right? So Tennessee made their own laws, and when Tennessee did it, the hemp law federally was that your total accumulation of THC is another place that the legislation was ignorant. They only thought there was THC in marijuana. There's not. There's 11 different THCs. They're all different chemical molecules that you can take in. Like you remember chemistry, like how electrons jump from one to another.
Mm-hmm.
Well, if you get enough electrons to trade, then your delta 9 goes to delta 8, but it doesn't quite go to CBD. You just lost an electron. So chemically, any chemist is going to tell you that is not delta 9. Well, the law says delta 9. That's what it says. Literally, it doesn't say cannabinoids. It doesn't say all THC. It says delta 9. So then that opened the door in Tennessee to delta 10, delta 11. It's a chemical conversion. So I can take THC in their amounts that they said, 3%, and slowly roll it to delta 8, or slowly roll it to delta 10, or delta 11 now. And once they figure it out, the process, and it's not really figuring out, it's the technology. So since the government had cannabis shut down for so many years, there was really not a lot of research done on it. It was all just propaganda that the government was putting out. There was no research to back it. They were just saying stuff because they didn't want people to use it because they were lied to through the 30s, 40s, and 50s. Well, now the technology is coming out to where you've got these big reactors that can go to 9,000 psi, you know what I mean, press it to hold the chemical molecule where it needs to be to make delta 11. And when the technology gets better, they'll have delta 12. And the thing that upsets me the most about what is happening with Tennessee laws is there are things right now that are legal on the market, and I've been a marijuana smoker since I was 15, and I've never seen or heard of the effects of smoking, just normal marijuana to be, that bad or terrible. Sure, people might have a bad experience. Some people may end up in the hospital, but they're going to be okay. There's no such thing as an overdose, and you can't die. You're just going to have a really bad time, like if you take too much. And that's what makes me mad. Is like right now you've got THCO that's legal in Tennessee. That stuff is so strong I can't smoke it, and I've smoked it all day for years. And I had about a 10-year hiatus, but before that was all day for years. It's so strong I can't smoke it. It's so strong a friend gave me some when I went skiing a couple of years ago, and this is legal. It locked me up for 4 hours and I couldn't move.
THCO?
It's called THCO, and it's super strong. The feds have actually put out guidelines now to make it illegal or controlled, but because of Obama's law, the feds have no jurisdiction in Tennessee. And because our legislature kind of ignorant, Senator Dan Lamberth last year tried to ban Delta 8 and all of it, and that's where he messed up. But and not really sure that anything should be banned, but the government doing what the government doesn't allow the proper information to get out, and the proper, you don't want people to have a bad experience. You don't want things on a shelf that people don't know. Right now you got THCO being sold at convenience stores. If it was up to me, I would at least have it behind a controlled counter. Like,
How do you feel about that? Because that's something we talk about. Prevention Coalition, I discuss this regularly. I think anything with CBD, all of that should not be readily available. It shouldn't be where you can just grab it at a convenience store. You should
I think
like
CBD is okay because there's no real way to have a bad time. It's musculoskeletal. It's not. It doesn't affect your.
But
That's what I was going to ask.
But I still feel you should have to. I mean, like cigarettes or anything else. I think you should have to. Still be able to buy it. No problem.
Well, let's talk about a reality.
But ask for it.
Do you have kids, Lauren?
I do.
How old are they?
19 and 3.
Oh, 3. Well, your 19-year-old would probably work, but I'd like her to be a little younger. But anyway, take a 19-year-old, a 16-year-old, give her a $100 bill. And when she's 19, that'll work perfectly. And tell her to go get a fifth of liquor or a quarter bag of pot, whichever one's easier.
I don't know. She could probably get both.
I've done it. I've done it with my kids, and my kids have a much harder time getting alcohol because they can literally go to a trailer in Pelham or, some guy's house on the mountain who don't card, who don't check their IDs, who doesn't have a business he's worried about losing. Yeah. So if it were legal and it were behind counters, I think their kids would have a lot harder time getting a hold of it. And in places like Colorado and Washington where it's legal, it's proven to be true.
Listen, I'm not saying it shouldn't be legal. I don't say it shouldn't be sold.
That's how I feel. I think it should be behind a counter.
But I think it should be behind a counter where you can't just reach and grab it.
And so far all I've seen they are. Like even the convenience stores and stuff that sell it, they have those glass things where you have to reach in. I haven't seen one yet that it was wide open.
But I want to know why do you say CBD would be okay outside of behind a counter, whereas the Delta 8, Delta 10 should be?
Well, it's mode of reaction. So it's the mode at which, how it affects your body. So it affects your body. THC, Delta 9 THC, affects your central nervous system. CBD is musculoskeletal. So in your body, you have what's called an endocannabinoid system of neuroreceptors that are able to absorb cannabinoids and use them. And the reason that we have that is through millions of years of human evolution, we ate a lot of cannabis and a lot of cannabinoids because there are actually cannabinoids in grass and lettuce and everything in very small amounts. Well, back when we were hunter-gatherers, we used to walk across the lands just eating flowers and our bodies were full of cannabinoids.
Right.
Because they help us suppress pain, they help us keep our anxiety level down. They really help regulate the part of our homeostatic function. But because people today don't eat nearly enough like greens and lettuce and fresh foods and fresh vegetables, we don't get the cannabinoids, and that's why when people ingest the cannabinoids, they're like, oh my, I feel great, I feel good again. Yeah, because you feel like you should have felt, because that's how nature intended you to feel. That's how it builds you.
That makes sense. I had fibromyalgia, I don't know, probably 7 years ago. And it was to the point that I was going to the doctor. They were giving me, pills to make me function, feel better, be able to get through the day with a lesser level of pain. And CBD is actually what I started taking and where I found relief. So, okay, that makes sense that it's muscular and skeletal, which I also believe that fibromyalgia is a lot of trauma that is trying to push out of the body. So, kind of a little bit of a mix up there, but
I get it. I mean, it's a pain reliever, and it worked for me too. So I was an opiate addict for 7 years, and I came by honestly. I was in the Army for 8 years. I got hurt, and I got really bad back problems. And after my second back surgery, of course, it was really painful, and they put me on opiates. And I knew the realities. I knew that they were addictive and everything else. But the pain was so bad I had to, or I couldn't work. Right. I was at the point where I could only take 2 weeks off of work or lose my job, and I couldn't afford to lose my job, so I just stayed on them. And after about a year, I couldn't come off. Or whenever I would try, I would get crazy sick. Like my head would spin. I couldn't think. You couldn't talk to me, anything. So I just started doing the maintenance dose. Like 5 milligrams every time my eyes would start to twirl, and and then for 6 years after that, I wasn't even getting high anymore. Just trying not to get sick so I could keep my job. And finally got to the point where it so disrupted my life. I went to my HR, and thank goodness for JSB and Telehoma and their HR department, because they were really good to me. I worked there for 7 years. Kevin Sulaw was my boss, and I just went to my HR department and I said, look, I'm addicted to opiates. And they're like, well, we can do all this rehab. And I said, let me try it my way. And I said, but here's what I need you to do. Don't test me for marijuana for the next month or two. And they said, okay. And I went home, and they said, okay, here's what we're going to do for you. They said, whenever you start to feel sick, if you're too sick to be at work, just go home. And you can clock out. Your job will be fine. So I could manage to work till 10 or 11 and not be on anything, but then I would get too sick. So I would just go home and use quite a bit of cannabis. And most of the time it would relax me, take the anxiety away, put me to sleep. It actually killed all the nausea involved and all the diarrhea. It was gone, and that's a proven fact that it does that. And sure enough, after about 2 weeks of using cannabis, I didn't need opiates anymore, and I never went back. And the thing about the cannabis is that people can say whatever they want to, and it may be psychologically addictive, and I guess it is, to some portion of people who are always going to be on something because they've got trauma and they've got other things they're kind of trying to deal with, and they don't have a therapist or the medical or the means to, so they go to alcohol or they go to something. We all get mad at these addicts, and we forget that there are brothers and our cousins and sometimes us. Right. And that really it's not a nefarious thing. It's just people trying to deal with their own crap and their own trauma, and they don't have any way to escape the realities of a suffering life other than to go to cannabis or to alcohol. But I've been able to put up and down cannabis. I mean, I smoke it every day and have, but I haven't today, and I could not tomorrow. It's not drawing me like opiates did. It's not. My hands aren't shaking. I look forward to going home later on, relaxing, and smoking a little bit. But other than that, I mean, no problems with my life. And I really think, I honestly don't see how anybody, legislature, anybody, can be okay with alcohol sales and not okay with cannabis sales.
Or okay.
Ask any police officer.
With treating, a child or anybody with an antidepressant versus try CBD, try Delta 8, I don't know, like Delta 8, Delta 10, what they work for as far as the body is concerned or the mind is concerned, but learning how to treat yourself in a more natural and holistic way versus a chemically produced pill. And something that I went through because I have anxiety and I've got depression is I was given antidepressant medicine, five different tops, nothing worked. They finally did a test on me. Everything that they'd given me was counter reacting to what I needed. They'd never once hit the dot on what my body would accept and react to. So by learning to step away and say it's okay and step into accepting that marijuana or cannabis, because I grew up that had a bad rap, that was bad. When I stepped in and opened my mind to accept that maybe this will work, and it did, and now I'm on nothing. Yes, I do. I have Delta 8 gummies and cookies, but I tell everybody, I do a fourth of a cookie, and I can make that last me 2 weeks.
That's my wife. My wife can make one gummy last 4 days.
Yes.
That's funny because that's a conversation that Ricky and I had. Do you mind me spilling your business a little
bit?
Go ahead. Okay. So Ricky had always told me that he couldn't smoke, normal marijuana, because it was too strong and it gave him crazy paranoia and crazy anxiety. And it took me a while to figure out why. And I have figured out why. And it's just basic dosages. It's because, like I said, the government kept it hidden for a long time, so there were no studies. Nobody came out to say how much alcohol. We've got all these studies for alcohol. You can do 1 ounce and your blood goes to this, but nothing for cannabis. Well, what I figured out was they're just overdosing themselves. Right. So what happens is, in the culture of the black market, you got that one friend who's a stoner, like me, that Cody, that comes in with a joint. Well, I've been smoking weed for a long time. What I have, you may not should take. And, for some reason in the culture, it became common and to give people a bad experience. Like, oh, look, we messed him up. He's passed out in the corner. That's not funny. That's poisoning someone. It's horrible. So it was a while back. I had pretty much some of the strongest stuff I think you can ever buy. And Ricky was apprehensive at first, but I told him how to do it. I said, if you want to smoke it, I said, just take the smallest of the smallest puffs. Don't try to hang with Cheech and Chong.
Yeah.
Just a little bit and walk away. Because if you gave somebody a taste of bourbon and they said, wow, I really love that. I've never had bourbon before. I've never drank alcohol. Would you really give them a fifth drink? No, you'd overdose. It'd be poison.
That's what I tell my friends, that come to me with stress and anxiety, whatever it is that they're going through. I tell them, look, this is what I do. And I'll give them one of my little gummies. I'm like a fourth, and in 2 hours, if you don't feel anything, maybe a little bit more, but wait. Like it's gonna take a second. Just wait. Do not start eating the bear because you're not feeling release.
That's exactly what we tell people, to wait 2 hours, generally. Or what I've learned recently is it has almost the same chemical reaction to ibuprofen, which is beautiful because you can ask people how long it takes ibuprofen to hit them, and cannabis will be about the same.
Okay.
Within 8% the same.
Okay.
So it's easy to tell people, whatever your dosage is. So me and the company I can't mention are actually working on a product, but it won't really have that big an appeal until marijuana eventually goes legal, which we all know it will. I don't know what they're waiting on. But the idea is like a Z-Pack. Like you get those Z-Packs from the doctor that say, take 7 pills the first day, 5 the next day. So we want to flip it. So make the first pill 1 milligram of THC or CBD, whatever product we're selling, and then you can give instructions. Take this, the first day. If it doesn't do anything the next day, you take 2. The next day you take 3. Well, what you can do is you can find your dosage without having a bad experience.
Yes.
Rather than just taking 100 milligrams and being, oh my gosh, that was too much. I never want to touch this stuff again. They can start slow and see where the dosage is.
That's perfect.
And I really wish doctors would do that.
Maybe you're onto something here, because that's perfect to know, and you have to kind of experiment on your level. So I know my level is a fourth. I'm a weenie level, and I've been doing this for a couple of years, but I stay where I maintain to not feel the pain, and I have 100,000 tabs open in my brain at one single time, and that helps me to check in and be like, okay, this one's worth it, or no, I'm going to close this tab.
Well, that's what people don't realize, and I wish there'd been more studies, and we'll get there eventually.
Yeah.
So there are 162 different cannabinoids. It's not just CBD, and the ratio between those is
what?
Okay, so there's 162 different cannabinoids, and there are about 32 known terpenes, and there are about 16 known flavonoids. Terpenes are what makes it smell. Flavonoids are what makes it taste, or sometimes smell. They kind of intermingle a little bit. Well, the terpenes alone have an effect. The flavonoids have an effect. And each of the cannabinoids, depending on the ratio within them, have an effect. And that's why if you talk to any stoner, they're like, oh, give me some of that gelato, because they like that specific ratio that the terpenes are in there. Like, for instance, if any of the cannabis users out there have ever smelled that really piney smelling cannabis.
You mean when you're driving down the road and you're behind a car and you get hit with a whiff and you're like, whoo, somebody.
Well, if it's piney, that's piney. That's what you're smelling is piney. And when you get that citrusy smell in cannabis, that's citrine. They're different terpenes. Well, they actually have effects. Like the citrine will have a more energy effect, give you clarity. So if anybody's ever used that cannabis and all of a sudden they just got focused and everything went clear, or they wanted to sit down with a guitar and play it for 4 hours and they lost track of time, it kind of makes you creative. It makes you focus.
Okay, so you said that's citrine?
Yeah, citrine.
Just taking notes over here.
I need some citrine.
Well, you're only going to, you can buy those products now as just the terpenes. If you wanted to add those other things, now they can extract the terpenes from cannabis and they sell them in jars of just the chemical, like if you wanted to add them to drinks or whatever. So that's how most of your vapes are made, and that's another thing I dislike about the market. You mentioned a minute ago being organic and trying to get closer to nature and not to get on that big pharma conspiracy kick, although I think everybody should be on it. I can't stand them. But everybody thinks that big pharma is the biggest lobby against cannabis. It's not. It's not tobacco either. It's alcohol.
Well, yeah. Okay.
Anheuser-Busch donates more money to anti-cannabis movements than anybody else in the world. And second is big tobacco. And the reason is because it's been proven now in the legal states that alcohol consumption has dropped to almost 50%. Because most people know you can't take a drink and use a heavy cannabis product. You're going to night-night. I mean, yeah, if you want to go to sleep, but that's all that's going to happen. Yeah. And what happens is everybody thinks that if we legalize cannabis in Tennessee, it's going to bring in all this new money. Well, no, not really. It doesn't work that way. For one, you can't move it because of the federal laws. It's still federally illegal to move marijuana across state lines. So you can only operate within the state of Tennessee. Well, in a single state, and even once you get bigger, you can't take water out of one side of a bucket, put it in the other side of a bucket and get more water.
Pie's only so big.
The pie's only so big. So every household has an economy, right? They have, rent's got to be paid, mortgage's got to be, power's got to be paid, water's got to be paid, all that. Well, also they've got that little, entertainment budget where dad might buy a 6-pack of beer every day when he gets off work and come home and drink a 6-pack of beer. Well, what's happened is they don't buy the 6-pack of beer anymore. They buy cannabis. So it's stealing the market share from Budweiser and giving it to the cannabis industry, which I think is a much healthier industry.
Correct.
And then when people, smoke cannabis, usually they quit smoking cigarettes almost entirely or diminish it greatly. Because you really don't need it. And you'll notice too is, just a little health advice for everybody, for all of you smokers out there, you cannot smoke cigarettes and smoke cannabis. You need to stop one or you're going to die. It's just too much. It's too much tar in your lungs. And most people figure it out on their own. If they smoke cigarettes in their 20s or whatever, then they're coughing up stuff and like, I got to quit something. And they do, because it's just too much. But luckily nowadays, the technology is getting way better, and you don't have to have any of that tar. We've got vaporizers that can literally vaporize just the cannabinoids, put them in water, and you inhale them, no different than a vape. But I don't like the vape market, and here's why I don't like the vape market, because they're not using actual flower. They're pulling all the THC out of various sources and just getting the Delta-9, and then they're mixing, chemically made terpenes to make those vapes, those marijuana vapes.
Yeah.
If we ever get to the point where I'm legally able to make those, I want to start, it may be a little bougie, it may be a little more expensive, it may be artisanal or whatever, but I want to do it all out of the handcrafted flower, the actual plant. Everything we grow up there is organic. I can't certify as organic because the way the government's rules are with organic certification, you have to grow in dirt. There's no other way. But I don't see why. Like we grow in cocoa, which is hydroponic. Well, it's literally coconut husks. How is that not organic?
Right.
But they still won't let me declare it organic.
Yes.
But I still call it organic. I said we grow because we grow in coconut husks. And I don't use pesticides. I use nematodes. I use beneficial bacteria. I use lacewings. I use ladybugs. I use.
Have you always been?
Yes. Yes.
I mean,
For as long as I've known Cody, and it's been most of my life. Yes.
What's the age difference between you two?
Yeah, I think close to
You're 40 now, right?
42,
You're 40. Oh yeah, so I'm 40 now.
41, 42, 8, 9 years from there.
Okay. All right, I'm sorry. Carry on.
I'll just say that Cheech and Chong are both in their 80s and they're doing fine.
Still making movies.
Still making movies.
Yeah. But okay, so you're talking about making, and I think you need bougie anything. It doesn't matter. I don't care what you talk
I
about.
would pay for it.
You talk about anything out there right now, and it, beer, whiskey, wine, cigarettes. Like you've got the Keystone Light, and then you've got the, I don't know, what's that crap, Cod drinks with the Viking on the can.
Oh yeah, fancy bougie beer.
Yeah. So, I mean, like it doesn't matter what you're doing. There's always going to be bougie out there.
But I mean, to get his
But,
and to know that it's not
and that's what I tell everybody, because I take these all the time. Anybody asks me, and I might eat 10 gummies a month, maybe. Some months not even that much. But you sit there and look at it. I know every step of this process.
Right.
I know where it goes from let's just say in the dirt, even though sometimes it's not dirt, but in the dirt.
Everybody calls it dirt.
Yeah. In the dirt
You picked
to
your
the gummy.
flower.
Like I know every step of this process, and I've seen how they go through. And I know the work they put into it. So you can't. I don't care what you take. There's nothing you're out there doing right now that you can tell me that you are more involved in how that product goes than I am with what I take in these gummies.
But everybody doesn't have the luxury that you have
That's
to
true.
be friends with this person.
But-
so they're going to have to trust you.
Well, one day I would like to live stream or actually grow and stuff like that, but at this point we have to kind of keep it a secret. It's not really a secret. Most people know where it is, but security is an issue because we have a lot of product in there. People get it confused with marijuana, and the last thing we need is somebody breaking their facility and chopping all the plants down and tearing up our equipment, thinking they're going to get a bunch of pot, and then they get home and they don't even get the pot. It's just CBD. They're not going to get high like they thought they were, and then they just throw it in the trash.
So is the plant itself different?
No.
Okay.
So as far as the evolution of cannabis goes, it was all hemp. And people used it for millions of years. They found, old icemen and ice that had cannabis in their bags. Of course, everyone used it. Christ would have used it. It was a common medicine. It was used
The
in every.
sheep were probably made out of it.
What was used in? Well, they smoked it and they ate it too. It was in every medicine up until the 19th or up until it was made illegal in the 1930s. You can go back and look at 1905 bottles that literally say cannabis indica, like in them as a product, because it's great. I mean, it has all sorts of wonderful medical effects, and it's natural.
Okay, let's talk indica.
Well, I was going to go through the evolution real quick
Okay.
first, because it all started as simple. It's no different than corn. You know how the evolution of corn happened? Corn actually started as a small grass, and because human beings at one point, 25,000 years ago, moved from hunter-gatherers to more of an agrarian style of living, to more agricultural style. By the way, back then there was no patriarchy, it was all matriarchy. Women ran everything, and it wasn't until men had to run plows, until it got to where commercial agriculture got to the point where they had plows, that men actually, the patriarchal society started out. Before that, they were all run by women, because the men were out killing, saber-tooth tigers. The women all ran everything. The women had the councils, they ran everything. I just thought that was an interesting side.
I like that.
But over time, and here's the thing about GMOs. A GMO isn't what people think it is. They think that scientists take it in a lab and shoot chemicals in it. No, it's not. It's hand-cultivated products over thousands of years usually. So what happened was the Native Americans found these small grasses, and then they found another one, 100 miles away that was a bigger grass, and then they bred them together. And eventually, over 25, 30,000 years, we've got corn. It started off as a small grass, no bigger than in your yard, but the same way with hemp. Cannabis just evolved over the time. It's always carried THC, just like grass has some THC in it. It's very, very small amount. Every plant does.
Okay.
They have a cannabinoid system.
That's why cows are so happy.
Right.
Well, it actually helps
And
with
so
their
they go
pain
to
suppression,
McDonald's.
with inflammation, other things. It's part of God's way of keeping you from being inflamed and keeping you from hurting all the time and keeping you from having other disorders, because there's chemicals in there that you need.
Everybody, if you are hurting, it is inflammation. There is such a level of inflammation. I'm learning so much about
And people are okay with going to the doctor's office and having a needle stuck in their back that's, as big as a dang pool cue. But they're not okay with just, once a day maybe taking a gummy or two, or, taking a gummy or two at night, because Big Pharma has lied to everybody. It's like for years they told, we all think that there was no antibiotics before. Bull crap. For 500,000 years, people have been using sulfur as an antibiotic. And guess what, folks? Today our antibiotics are sulfur-based. It's the same stuff. My grandmother would have given, my grandmother was an apothecary in Estill Springs. My great-grandmother was too, of sorts, and they knew how to mine sulfur out of the ground. She knew that there was 11 different types of lettuce. She knew that if you had poison ivy real bad, she made a tea out of sassafras root and golden seal root. And it worked. But guess what? The scientists just took that exact same process my granny did, moved into a lab, got the government to say, well, we're the only people we're allowed to do this. And there you move on.
Your grandmother was a healer, and somebody looked down on that and said, oh no, that's voodoo. Don't believe that. Let me take it and chemically enhance it for you.
Right, and all she was doing was taking what her mother taught her, and her mother taught her,
Yeah.
how to live a life of not so much suffering. But we let these industries take over everything in these corporatists, and I think the United States is about to see what the result of that is. I think we're about to experience life at the end of the empire, but
I agree.
because it's all running out. Capitalism can only run so far because it requires cheap energy, cheap resources, cheap labor, and cheap transportation. And if any of those pillars falls, so does capitalism. And you're about to run into that because you've got the rest of the world through globalization that are catching up. You have people in India driving Cadillacs now too. People in China driving Buicks too. But luckily, like Gary Jensen said, we'll run out of atmosphere far before we run out of oil, so we're good.
We're good.
So we start talking about weed again.
Well, I was gonna say, tell me, Rock Creek Cannabis. So, I know where this whole thing came from. Where'd you get the name, and what's up with the gnome?
So the name just came from literally, I grew up on Rock Creek Road, and I live off of Rock Creek Road now, and I live in between Rock Creek Road and Rock Creek itself. So figured it was probably aptly named, and I kind of liked it, just Rock Creek. I've always really liked the Rock Creek name. And I've always been in, well, I don't know that always. So my mother was into gnomes. So in the 80s, when that collectibles market got really big, there was a gnome company called Tom Clark Gnomes. And they made these really, cute hand-carved gnomes. You've seen them. I've got hundreds of them. I've collected them since I was a little kid. And I've always just liked gnomes and gnome lore. And, I don't actually believe they're real or anything like that. I just think it's cute. And my grandmother lived in Chattanooga when I was a kid, and they had Rock City. They got all those gnomes in there, and I always loved Rock City. It was a magical place. I loved the style of the gems on the wall and just the weirdness of it all. And I didn't really play off of that. It wasn't until a year or two later I realized that after going back to Rock City that I haven't been to since I was a kid, I was like, oh, they're going to think I stole this name because I've got gnomes and I've got Rock Creek, but I didn't. And I've talked to our legal team. I'm good. Since I literally live on Rock Creek, there's not a lot of things they can say. And I can prove that I've collected gnomes since I was 8. So I just like gnomes. And And I mean, I kind of consider myself a gnome. I mean, what do gnomes do? They come out at night and they garden. Well, you know me, I'm up there all the time. I'm at night and I'm gardening. I'm just a little gardener with a shovel. That's all I do. I mean,
So,
You're just a tall gnome.
you know our troll that you like to point out all the time? That's because of
As
Cody.
soon as you said gnome, I had to find him.
Yeah, well, that's because of Cody. I bought that for him.
Oh,
yeah, that's my company logo.
okay. And I see it on your shirt.
Yeah.
I like it.
So we're just doing the best we can. I mean, I don't. The CBD market is. I mean, if it wasn't for government interference, I think the market would be a lot better. You really get better players. But
How do you know if you're getting real CBD or if you're getting, like if you go into a gas station and you buy it from there versus coming and buying it from someone that you know is literally making it? How do you? Is there such a thing as a fake CBD? Are you getting bad product?
Anybody that's selling a cannabis product in Tennessee, it's not required by law, but it's a good business practice to have what's called the COA, the Certificate of Analysis, because the state of Tennessee requires it for every crop of cannabis, for us to have a COA to show what it tested at, how much CBD was in there and how. So if you go to a store and buy it, they should be able to provide it. If they can't, I don't know that I'd buy it, but there are trusted names in the industry now. Like I said, so that's starting to appear. Cumberland Cannabis, Haygood, Sugarleaf, Southern Cannabis, great companies. I've been to them all. I mean, everything is top notch. Their quality's right. They're clean facilities. They really care. Mm-hmm. And as far as that goes, right now in the industry, I would just stick with a name you trust.
But if you're new and you don't know who to trust,
well, a lot can be said for packaging. Don't buy it out of a Ziploc bag in a convenience store. If it's very well packaged and the product looks well. I mean, to a new user, I can see the differences, but most old cannabis users are going to be able to look at it, smell it, and tell.
Okay.
I can actually tell the difference. I couldn't for a long time, but don't tell law enforcement this because they don't want to try to hire me. But I can tell the difference between every I can smell it. I can look at it. Without testing it, I can tell you. I can't tell you what the percentage could be. So it could be, like an 8% THC, which would be illegal, 8% CBD product. But if it's straight hemp or straight marijuana, I can tell.
Huh?
Yeah, I'm going to shamelessly plug. You can also get all these great products over there at Loco.
So that's what I was going to ask. If somebody wants your product specifically that's listening or watching today, it's available for sale.
Well, Rock Creek gummies are for sale at Loco here in Winchester, and right off of Chamber Way, right behind the Chamber of Commerce, the little store that carries my gummies. But that's all we're doing with gummies. I'm not really focused on gummies right now. There's a lot of gummies that are coming up, but we've got some ideas on a completely different edible line of a lot of different edibles, from chocolates to cookies to everything else.
They're so good.
Your face is lit.
But I'm so concentrated on the grow side of it right now that's taking up all my time. But my wife is going to start, hopefully, actually tomorrow is her deadline to come up with a business name for the edible market. That's something else I want to talk about, edibles. So edibles in Tennessee should satisfy every pot smoker, no matter how much they like to imbibe. Because what Tennessee did with the law on edibles is they had the edibles to the same standard as flower, which is 3% THC by weight by volume. Well, when you do the math, so I take a cookie, for instance, and just for the radio audience out there, I'm going to hold my hands up and I'm going to make about 5 inches in diameter. That cookie would weigh about 800 grams, anywhere from 600 to 800 grams, depending on how many morsels of chocolate you put in it or whatever. Well, 800 grams is how many milligrams, math major?
800 grams
Times 1,000.
is, that's 8 million milligrams.
Right, so divide that by 3, no, it's 800,000. But if you divide that by 0.3%,
800.
look. So you got an 800 gram cookie.
Okay.
A milligram's 1,000, so times 1,000.
Yes.
That's
800,000.
80,000 divided by 3%. I can have almost 2,000 milligrams of THC, Delta 9 THC in that cookie.
What?
Yeah, legally. It says 3% by weight by volume of Delta 9.
Wow.
So my gummies, for instance, we only allow no more than 10 milligrams in a gummy, which is far legal because I could legally put 110 milligrams in one gummy. But that would give my user a bad experience. I wouldn't want that.
Yeah.
So we actually play a lot with the chemistry and try to make it a really good product that's lighter so people don't have a bad experience. We're about to come out with a new product called Sleepy Stevie's. Shout out to Stevie Counts. A friend of mine has been having a little trouble sleeping, and so I found several different varieties of hemp that have the terpenes and the flavonoids for sleeping. They're rest, and they're going to be called Sleepy Stevies because they will put you down. And I rest so well on them that I wake up the next morning like you did when you were a toddler. You forget how well rested you used to rest. Like when you were little and you tried to get up, but you were just melted to like the couch or the mattress, and you can't get up, and everything's relaxed and numb, and you feel great. Yeah, that's how it is.
That's for my 3-year-old this week. Everybody's complaining that their kids are not sleeping or they're waking up really early. My child has slept until 9 a.m. every morning, and I walk in, I'm like, Rylan, not budging. And I want to sleep like that again. So
when I first started, I had a lot of hemp because I couldn't really sell it all, and so I had a lot laying around. So I started, listening to people and talking to people, and I would find people, like I was working with a guy who had a son that was on the spectrum, a little autistic, or maybe the spectrum's weird. You
right.
Asperger's to it's weird. But I said, have you ever tried CBD? And he was lamenting. They were sad. Him and his wife were having a lot of problems. They were having to run their kid to this doctor and that doctor and try to do therapies. And they had him on so many medications at this point, the kid was almost catatonic. Mm-hmm. And I said, I'm not a doctor or anything, man, but if I was you, that's your kid, man. I said I would prefer him. I said, wouldn't you? And he said the same thing. He would prefer him the way he was in a normal state rather than the medicated state. So I said, all right. So he decided that he was going to take his son off all those medicines, and he did. And I talked him into CBD, and the kid is now 21 years old and goes to college, and he takes CBD, and he still has some problems, but they're a lot better.
Right. Yeah. It's almost like it goes in and it relaxes the vice grip around whatever is causing the issue. It could be muscular, it could be emotional, it could be where you're functioning on the spectrum. But I've seen a lot of highlights to, the use of CBD and being open.
Well, when I've seen such dramatic effects of cannabis, and it's not just CBD, actually the best product is a 50-50 ratio between THC and CBD, to have both, but in milder effects. It's just not legal in Tennessee. I would much rather that, because without THC, you end up, quite a few people will end up with a stomach ache, or they'll feel like they'll have, at first when they use CBD, and that's really from the lack of THC. The THC would kill that. So the best ones coming out of California, those places right now that are medically the best, are more like 8% THC, 8% CBD, with that perfect ratio, so you really get both. Take care of mind, take care of body, take care of both. And you got to wonder how many of these, and I'll try not to use the fancy word, but so there's a fancy word called transgenic or transmutagenic, so which means that if you were poisoned, for instance, you could pass that poison down to your child even if it wasn't born yet, because it's actually altered your DNA or changed your body in some way. And I really think that because the modern age, we don't hunt gather anymore, we don't eat nearly enough vegetables and fruit. I wonder, I just can't wait for the studies to come out to see if the long-term effect of that over generations, because your mother didn't use any cannabis, so her system was different. Her mother didn't either, because her system was different. That may be why, I'm just postulating here, but why we have such high rates of autism now, because that seems to be
maybe we'll start to see it decrease too. So maybe we've hit that peak, and with the legalization and things, CBD is available and you can buy it now. Maybe we'll begin to see that decrease where we're starting to get it back into our system. So we're alternating our DNA.
Well, the only way we can do that though is to get the government to free the market, get them out of it, and quit making laws they don't understand.
So we're on the peak, and we're going to win this battle here, and it will happen, and then we'll start to see the decline of autism, possibly. And that would be
I'm just completely guessing.
I'm just saying that would be a great study to see how it has.
Yeah, over generations, if you have a cannabis user, generationally,
right?
If that will start to go away in humanity.
Right.
All right, nothing though doesn't have a negative side. So what is the negative side of all this?
What is the negative side of what?
Of cannabis, the whole process.
The biggest negative side I see is people beginning to smoke it when they were too young. And I did it as well. I smoked when I was younger. I don't like to see young people, because their brains aren't fully developed until they're 25 years old. And if you begin heavy cannabis use before 25 years old, you will affect, I don't know that it's negatively, I don't know that it's positive. It may be positive, I don't know, but you will affect your brain development. And I have seen kids, and we all have, and here's where that bad student comes from, that just stay high. They don't get jobs, they stay in the house, they play video games all day, and they just stay high. But chances are the kid would stay and never play video games without the weed.
Right.
And the kid is probably dealing with something, social anxiety disorder. Why doesn't he want to go outside? Why doesn't he want to? So again, it's a trauma response. So to me, almost any time you see an addict, that shouldn't be stigmatized negatively.
Mm-mm.
That's someone who's missing something in their life.
There should be a curiosity opening up of what's going on here.
I think one of the greatest books ever written that could solve most of the world's problems is called Chasing the Scream, and I can't pronounce the guy's last name because he's Swiss or something. But it's called Chasing the Scream. And in this book, it goes through the only country in the world that's legalized drugs entirely, and that's Portugal. And Portugal legalized drugs entirely, and what they did was they took it out of the politicians' hands for the first time ever and gave it to the smart kids. And the smart kids were the scientists and the philosophers. And they said, whatever y'all decide, we're going to do it in a year. Because they were having a massive problem. They were having thousands of overdoses. They had city parks where there were needles lying everywhere and heroin junkies. And, most of the heroin is created right there in either North Africa or the Middle East. So it was easy to get it. And so they said, we have such a problem, we're going to just hand it off. And when they did, the scientists came back and said, well, I don't want you to do. I want you to legalize all drugs, all of them, heroin, meth, all of it. And I want you to take all that money that you're using for interdiction, which is a fancy word for stopping it, from bigger guns and more violence and everything else, which is just bring more violence to our society. I want you to do something else with that money. I want you to try to bring these people who are your kids and your cousins back into society and show them that you love them. Because what they found was the initial studies that were done on heroin, cocaine, and things like that were based on a 60s study called the rat study. And what they did was they put a rat in a cage with one bottle on one end that had cocaine in it, and the bottle on the other end that just had water in it, and the rat eats the cocaine until it dies. Well, then it was like 78, and another scientist said, wait a second, that's the only options you gave the rat was cocaine, water, and an empty cage. What are you going to do? So they built what was called Rat Park. And they built this beautiful rat cage, and they had the same experiment, cocaine on one end, water on the other. But he gave it females. He gave it things to mate with. He gave it companions to play with. He gave it like wheels and all this other stuff. That rat would occasionally use the cocaine a little bit. That's it. Yeah. So what it really is, it's trauma. The reason people are addicts is because they're lonely. And that's really what's going on wrong with the world today. Kurt Vonnegut said it best. If you want to solve the world's problems is that we used to grow up in villages and communities. We used to have 100 people to get wisdom from, to get love from, to get help from. And now corporatism has us all convinced that being the individual, doing it on your own, make it your way, all this stuff is the way, but that's not the way. No. And now we tend to look for a whole village in our wife. And we're surprised that we have a 70% divorce rate. Or we're looking for a whole village in our husband, expecting them to be all these things, and you can't be.
Or you turn to social media.
He said, so the best advice I can give you is to join a group, join a club, join the Hells Angels, join the bowling league, join something, but put more people around you.
Absolutely. Collectively.
Everybody's just lonely. And he said, by God, put those screens down, because those screens only have one purpose.
Isolation.
To sell you stuff. Your TV sells you stuff. Your phone sells you stuff. Every screen you look at sells you stuff. So if you ain't looking to buy it, put it down.
I like it.
That's Kurt Vonnegut.
I like it. I did hear about that study too. It was
study?
mentioned in a book, and I feel like it was a Malcolm Gladwell book, but I can't remember.
Chasing Scream's Johan something.
Okay.
His name's Johan something. But he goes through all the way from how drugs started to be illegal, how they were ended, and how crooked it is. And how there were so many lies and so much propaganda told. Basically, it was one guy who was given the head of prohibition of alcohol right before they legalized alcohol again. So he was given this big job. He was an aspiring guy. So he convinced J. Edgar Hoover, and at the time, to basically go against marijuana that was evil, to give him a narcotics division now, because heroin and marijuana and all this stuff's taking over everything, just so he could, he was losing his job with the prohibition industry. And he did, and it worked. And then he started, basically he invented lies and everything else. I forget the guy's name, it's in that book. And all sorts of bad data and everything else to bust all these people. At that time, it was only mostly jazz musicians and stuff that were smoking marijuana. So they just created this whole, stigma against it so that he could keep his job.
All right, we're fixing to wind it down, and we're going to go over, so you might as well just push your button.
Oh, yeah.
That's how all our shows go. You can script our shows if you want to. Good luck with all that.
Okay, so I sent you a couple of questions.
Oh, Lord.
Did you get a chance to look at them?
I did.
Okay, awesome. So I feel like you have shared a lot that is completely underestimated.
I talk a lot.
Today. But is there anything that you would like to add to that you feel would add value to people's lives if they were to listen, take it, use it?
Well, you asked me what my motto in life was, what I did model to live by. And I really think there's only one valuable motto, and that's just do the best you can. Nobody's asking anything more.
Do the best you can. Nobody's. Okay.
So we beat ourselves up,
right? We do.
Everything's in our heads.
Mm-hmm.
We have this
perception.
idea that we perceive that this person didn't like us, that this person said something mean to us, or this person did this person that, and it's not true. And I guess to add to what you said, I wish everybody out there would realize something. That when Christ said God is within you, he's meant that God is you. Meaning that you have all the control. God has given you all the control. Every choice that you make in life, whether it's good or bad, or whatever happens to you in life, is a result of your choices. You can do all of the right things, all of the right time, and have all of the bad things happen to you. That's just life. But it is still because of your choices. You chose it.
And it's also a big part of your mindset. You know?
Well, and here it goes back to mindset. So here's what I want everybody to remember, is that there's two people within everybody. There's your inner voice, and there's you. Your inner voice is not you. And you know this because often your inner voice will tell you to do things that you can tell it no, right? If you can tell it no, that means it's not you. So what is it? Well, what it is, it's a defense mechanism that we've all built up over hundreds of thousands of years of evolution that tells us to be scared of certain things. Don't go to that cave because a bad thing happened last time I went to that cave. And a lot of those things can be passed down by DNA. You can actually have traumatic experiences that your great-grandpa had. So that being said, those two people within you, one is you and one's not. Don't identify yourself as the one that's telling you things. That's your inner voice. Always check with reality first. You know, you look in the mirror and you say, I'm too skinny, I look gross. Who's telling you that? You know who's telling you that? 12-year-old Lauren. When 12-year-old Lauren was in 6th grade and somebody said that to you, well, that stayed with you. And that became a part of you. And it's a warning system. You think, I can't wear these pants, they're too short, I'm going to look floaty. Why do you think that? Because you made an association in 3rd grade when somebody told you you shouldn't wear those. Well, that's still there. 3rd grade Lauren is still there. Don't listen to 3rd grade Lauren. Don't listen to 12-year-old Lauren. Look at Lauren today. Look in the mirror today. Is she fat and ugly? No. She's a beautiful woman. Is she a mother? Yes. Does she do a great job? Yes. That's the reality. That's the facts you see. Why are you letting that inner voice lie to you?
I feel like I have just met the person that is bringing every book that I have read into like one individual right here. Like
Four Agreements?
No, I mean,
Thought
I've read that one
attachments?
too. But like every self-development and spiritual book that I have read, every part of that has come through in a conversation today. And what I usually tell people is we do have two people inside of us. And this one person that is two people is trying to connect with one person that is two people. And we're trying to perceive what the other two people in that one person is thinking. And we need to stop doing that. We need to just take that next best step. And if we're acting through love and kindness, then you can't go wrong. Yes, things are going to happen that may be challenging or hard or what we would perceive as bad. But at the end of the day, it's the mindset that creates the life. And then I heard something today, and you kind of triggered that in me. What if you realized that failure is truly not an option? That failure is not a reality. It's not real. And when I was listening to that, it dawned on me that failure is a perception, just as success is. So if you can take that away from your mind and step into every possibility that you could possibly have, or thought that you could have, and then you realize, okay, this isn't working, let me change gears, let me change direction. And you just continue to evolve until you create what it is that you're looking for, or creating that next best step.
Progress is made through failure. I mean, Edison said that. Edison demanded that every one of his engineers have at least 5,000 mistakes that they could write into a meeting every week, and he could tell them.
But every time he took it and he evolved it, he took it and he learned something. He took it and he progressed it.
Yeah, because if we know what doesn't work, it's much easier to find out what does.
Exactly.
But still, it can be frustrating. Trust me.
It is.
I know all these things, and I mean, so I don't want the whole listening public to believe that I'm some kind of like enlightened, like Buddha type who knows it all. Because I can say all these things, but it doesn't mean I can put them into practice
absolutely.
yet. But again, that's why they call it a practice. Meditative practice. Our whole life's a practice. It never ends. We're just trying to get better. I just hope the things that I've learned and the things that I know can facilitate my growth, and I can progress, and maybe help other people. And that's something that a great friend of mine, Cody Bucher, who I don't want to offend anyone, but Christian means Christ-like, and I've met very few of those people, but Cody Bucher is. Like, Cody Bucher is, I admire that man so much. He's 10 years younger than me, and he's my leader in that way. He gives his time to men's groups for his church. He gives his time. He runs the American Legion. He's an Iraqi war veteran. He gives free classes on the Constitution. I mean, he walks the walk and talks the talk. He's forgiving. He's loving. He's all the things I want to be, and I'm just blessed to have that kind of mentor in a way to show me how kindness and love really does get you the things you want. And God doesn't give you anything.
Mm-mm.
You give it to other people, and other people give it back to you. That's a system that God set up.
Mm-hmm.
You get more by giving more. love is where it's at, and it makes everybody feel better. And no matter what you think, there is a battle of good and evil. There is some good and evil force happening in this world, and right now we're kind of letting evil take over, and nobody's doing enough good to fight back. And I mean, I'm okay with 50-50, but come on, we got to get it to 50-50.
I feel like we're seeing a shift. I do feel like we're seeing a shift.
Well, scarily, more and more people almost are begging for the economic collapse. It's like people are begging just to get back to a simpler time. This is too much. This is too fast. We're growing too fast.
We've got to break the system to restart the system.
And
I can understand where people see that. I read something in a book. It's called A Course in Miracles, and it literally says, it's Jesus speaking to you, and he says, you're here, you're doing this, you're a loving person, but until you can forgive, I cannot accept your lilies that you present to me, because you're not willing to release your brother, therefore you're still not willing to release me.
It's like the start of Jesus' prayer, and that's what I realized when I really thought about the Beatitudes, which is my favorite part of the Bible. Like I said, I'm not a Christian, I'm Hindu, but the Bible's still very valuable. When Christ said, "Forgive me, Father, as I forgive those," it's not a gift, it's a trade. Mm-hmm. He's giving me forgiveness because I forgave those he loved. And that's what I realized. And it works. It really does work.
It does. I agree with you. We're going to have to get together at the
One
end
last
of this
thing,
for these notes.
One last thing. So I had a blessing that actually almost made me cry the other day. And I've been trying to give more and more. I pay for people's meals a lot of times ahead of me. If I see a little kid with a poor family in a store, they're trying to get a piece of candy or whatever, I'll buy it ahead of them and just leave it with the clerk, things like that. And I don't do it for any praise or anything. I just do it to, I don't know, maybe test Jesus' system a little bit.
Spread love. You're spreading love.
And sure enough, it works. So I went to Burger King the other day right here in Winchester. And I just got a Cash App card. I've never used it. Like, my kids had me get it because I get some Cash App sometimes. So I guess you can use like a credit card. Well, I handed her the Cash App card. I'll use this thing. It's got some money on it. And she hands it back to me and says, "You have a nice day," and I wrote on. Well, then I get home and I get a text that says, "Hey, I got declined because you hadn't activated it yet." I'm like, "Oh crap, I activate the card." And I called the manager the next morning. I spoke to her, and I said, "I went for my meal last night, my number 10 fish sandwich, and my card got declined." She says, "We know, we took care of it." And I said, "What do you mean you took care of it?" I said, "I've got means. I can come in and pay for it." She goes, "No, don't worry about it." And I said, "Well, why did you do that?" She goes, "We don't let people go hungry, sweetheart."
Oh.
She said, "We knew it declined." I could have cried. That's what the world needs more of.
That is what the world needs
Who
more of.
convinced everybody that selfishness and the more that I can just grab and hold for myself is a good thing? Yeah, you'll be lonely in your mansion. Enjoy.
And you know what? Thank you for accepting that, because people try to do nice things and we get so caught up in letting someone do something nice for us that we are keeping another person from experiencing a moment of gifting just by saying thank you. Maybe you pay it forward another way, but you don't have to. But learn how to accept that kind gesture. So thank you for accepting that and finding, the gratitude and the love and the beauty in that. Because we need to also allow ourselves to be vulnerable and in acceptance of other people's love.
Thank you for having me today.
Want to get one
All
more
right,
question?
one more. If you could shout out a small business or an individual, who would it be and why?
Well, Andy's going to kill me for this, but and he'll know what I'm talking about. But I'd like to shout out Soul Flowers in Estill Springs, and it's run by Jess Davis. She owns it, and I know Jen that works there. There's a few other girls, but it's a flower shop in Estill Springs, and it is one of the most beautiful spaces I've ever been into. Like the very first time I walked in there, Jess's sense of style is amazing. Mm-hmm. It just makes you feel warm. It makes you feel home. It's interesting. It's almost like a museum. She manages to find these pieces. She also designed the logo of the store. That's why it looks so cute and quaint.
That's beautiful.
She's just got a brilliant sense of style, and she manages to bring love and happiness to people's weddings, to people's events, and make them, different and not so commercial. And she's just got an incredible sense of design and style, and she's a good woman. She does all this while being a mother,
of twins.
Right. I can't imagine, but
And putting up with Andy.
yeah, there's that. And
Which means most of the time you too? Maybe
No.
you? No?
Not all the time.
it's just I've never met anybody like her who has that kind of sense of style, hyper intelligent, super hardworking, and just what she does is amazing. I don't see how you do it. I have no sense of style. Like I think matching is if my shirt is green and my shoes are green and my pants are green, I match. My wife says that is not true.
It's
but,
not true. But
but yeah, so Soul Flowers and Estill Springs. I'll shout them out.
beautiful. That's beautiful. All right.
Wrap it up, Ricky.
Right.
So we've got Cody Bucher with Rock Creek Cannabis, and you can find his gummies at Loco if you would like, if you are curious or interested in seeing what this is all about. But thank you so much for joining us.
You're welcome. Thank you for having me.
All right, y'all have a great day.
Now we gotta get a picture even though we were live.
And yeah.